Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Oh, another crazy moment from MTG. Marjorie Taylor Greene, evidently her staffer, on the floor of the House, went after and yelled at Representative Eric Swalwell for having the audacity, the gall, the cowardice of wearing a mask while he was on the floor and leaving the building. Now, understand, Swalwell's got two small kids. They're not vaccinated. Thinking, hey, I should protect myself, my kids. Personal choice. This is one of those weird things. And the reason I bring this up is I had it happen to me. Someone said, well, you're vaccinated. Why are you wearing the mask? I said, well, I'm not 2 weeks vaccinated. I'm getting there. And they said, common sense. If you're in a room full of people, wear the mask. Now, I handled it a lot less judiciously than Eric Swalwell did. Swalwell did get into his face and, did say some things. I was a little less tactful. Then again, I'm not on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Mine was just a basic blank you, and moved along. It was that simple. And it was that's it. and the response was from the person who said it, who was involved in this, was kind of shocked that that was it. I'm not going to get into a long drawn out conversation. Just blank you. Don't care. I moved along. Wasn't going to get into an exchange of spittle by screaming and hollering at them. I'll let them know exactly what the thought process was. And this is one of those things that has kind of stopped me, because look, I used to understand how people could consider themselves Republicans. I could. There was a time, and I know it's a long time past, but there was a time where I would go, there's part of me that understands, the idea of a smaller, less intrusive government. We don't want government in our lives, except in our bedrooms and in our marriages and whatever, and in our bakeries and all that stuff. I kind of got it. I kind of got the personal responsibility thing. Take care of yourself. Don't ask for help if you don't need it. That kind of stuff. That kind of, we're going to go it alone, and we're going to pull ourselves up, and we're going to work hard and do that stuff. I used to, again, I kind of alluring. I get it. That personal responsibility thing, a big thing with me. Something that we've instilled in our children, that you're never dependent on other people, because they're always going to let you down. You've got to do for yourself. You've got to be self-reliant. You've got to do these things, because that's how life works. But if you need help, or if someone else needs help, extend a hand. Be part of a community. And, there was part of me that goes, I kind of got it. What they sold was, enticing, the hyper individual. What they have become, however, is really, really ugly, hateful, mean, and worried about everyone else but themselves. And I was thinking about this with my, today, because, my grandfather's been gone for a lot of years. And, he used to always say, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Because this incident today, it got my attention. It was one of those things where I'm like, and it was snap. It was one of those things where, it's, there was no time for react. The reaction was what it was. And I just kept moving right along. Had that person pushed it, it probably could have gone and escalated to other uglier places. And I don't think anybody wanted that, especially them. But it got me thinking of, why would this person feel the need to interject? Why this visceral need to share the opinion of someone wearing a mask? Because look, here's the thing. I hope people do for the next 6 months. Like I said, the other day, the CDC for the first time said, you know what, going forward, maskless. You're fine. You're vaccinated. You're outside. You're not you're not confined in a space with a bunch of people. Go at it. And like I said, my doctor was very clear. He said, 6 months after they say go, he said, I'll still be wearing the mask for 6 months. So I said the other day, that was the day, 6 months from that day, I'll stop when I'm in a room full of people or in an enclosed space. Makes sense on a certain level, doesn't it? But not to this obvious this person. And this is one of those moments where you go, when did the Republican Party, who was about individual liberty, do your own thing, freedom, liberty, when did that change? When did it become the party of, if you see somebody with their kids having a mask on, call child services, or try and mock them in public, or try and shame them somehow? Look, you're not going to shame me. You're not going to embarrass me. You're not going to offend me. I've never been shamed. I've never been embarrassed. I've never been, I've never been offended. I've been angry. I've been ticked off, but never of those other things. So you're not going to get the result that you think. So this is where I think common sense, and I want to help. Part of my thought was helping people with common sense, because evidently, from what I'm told, it's not very common. The idea of minding your own business. That's one of those things that used to be common sense, because, and I was talking about this with a friend today. Common sense was something that if 20, 30 years ago, when I was younger and the person I was talking to were the same age, had that happened then, say, Marjorie Taylor Greene was running down the hall and screaming things at you and stalking you, it would have been just, AOC turning and popping her right between the nose, right on the beak. Same thing, 20, 30 years ago with this person who felt their need to interject into my life. In the old days, it had just been a smack. And you would have learned your lesson. And this is where I go back, and I've said this before, and I've taken heat from it because the soccer moms and all of that, they get upset. But the second 5-year-old little boys weren't allowed to smack each other around is when society started going to pot. Because we didn't learn when to shut our mouths. We didn't learn when to not offend, when not to interject into other people's world. And this is kind of where that liberty thing and independence thing I agree with. Like I said, what the Republicans were selling, the snake oil that they were selling, I can see how people would buy it. But I look at it and I go, how did that party become what we see? And it's just this weird kind of moment that I've found myself in, because more and more, there were things I agreed with that the Republicans sometimes talked about. They used to talk about fiscal responsibility. I'm a big believer in fiscal responsibility. I'm a big believer in spending money properly and doing the right things financially. Like helping people get an education, helping people ensure that they get preventative health care so that it doesn't turn into a lifelong problem or bigger problem. I'm all in favor of fixing our infrastructure. Good, sound, fiscally responsible kind of proposals and ideas. And yet we've got a Republican Party, against it. And look, they're talking about, and this is the part that blows my mind. They're talking about, yeah, we need infrastructure, but we can't raise taxes on rich people. The people who have it. What we need is we need to charge those working people. We need more usury fees. We need, all kinds of more. No, they're not talking about taxes. No, we're not raising taxes. No, we're charging fees. They're usury fees. Yeah, we don't seem to charge any of that stuff to the very wealthy. They seem to get off, fairly cheaply because they can buy our Congress for pennies. But it got me in this mindset today that as a country, we've changed, and not for the better. Technology has moved us into ways that I think we buy into this, that we can be anonymous, that we can spew whatever we want to whomever we want without repercussion. And I don't know how that changes. Because we're a couple generations away from when I was a kid. Back in the 70s, when you were a kid in the summertime, you were fighting at least 2 or 3 times a week, or at least where I lived. You were involved in some kind of scuffle over something, because it's how you settled things. Whether it was a foul in basketball, or hey, that ball was foul, or that ball was fair, or hey, whatever. There were disagreements that were worked out. Now we've got people who, more guns, because evidently there was another shooting that didn't get overly reported. No thoughts and prayers for the people of Rhode Island. Evidently 9 people were shot, and I didn't see, I happened to catch it, kind of one of those, this happened. No politician came out and talked about it. It wasn't, no thoughts and prayers, none of that. Just another day in America. And is that how we are going to have to settle our problems? It's crazy. Now, I did have a good moment today. I did. And it was one of these, I want to end, this with something good that happened. I met a woman who, she found a job that she's thrilled with. Hasn't worked through the pandemic because she had some ailments, has a child that has some ailments. Was grateful for the unemployment. Was grateful for the help getting through the pandemic. Barely made it through. But now went and found a job, and the wages have gone up. The employer trying to entice people. And that's a good thing. Because remember, tight labor market, rising wages, more goodies, more, you got to entice people to come back. Well, she's thrilled that she's able to go back to work and at a job that is going to pay her significantly higher than before the pandemic. And as I was talking to her, she was saying, "Look, I hear a lot of these stories out there of people saying, well, we're just lazy." And she's like, "No, the reality is there aren't jobs out there that we can live on." And what Biden's unemployment had done, and what the unemployment under Trump had done, had given them some options to, one, keep themselves safe, because, she believes had she gotten COVID, it would have killed her, but gave her family an opportunity to make choices. And she said, there are some people who, she believes, and, these are the people that they're calling lazy, who are staying home because they want to be with their families. And it got me thinking today, in this space of, I know a lot of people who would love to be able to have a parent stay at home. I know a lot of people who pine for that kind of Leave It to Beaver-esque kind of thing where you can survive on one income. Be it the man or the woman working, I don't care which. But somebody got to stay home and be with the kids and raise the family. And this is where, and it was something that got thrown at us before the show. Someone tweeted at us that in July, when the stimulus money, the rescue plan money goes into effect to help pay families with small children a small little bit of money every month through the earned income tax credit. Well, this will help do that. And I got into this thought of, we're kind of remaking what was the American experience. And we're thanks to Biden, and I'm hoping this is what plays out down the road. Thanks to Biden, that wages do go up, and that the automation monster that everyone had feared is actually something that's used for the positive. Instead of being forced to have two people in the workplace, having wages rise high enough that you can have one person work, and then technology could fill some of those other spots, and that we could have that nuclear kind of family idea. Now, it's not for everybody, but for the people who want it, to give them the choice to be able to partake in that, I think is incredibly important. We hear the party of family values talk all the time about how much they love the children and how much, they believe in the family, and yet no policies to help the family. And, I was thinking about this woman's story as she was talking about it. And, it was just one of those things that a good thing, something positive. Because out of this pandemic, I think we're all going to look for something positive, something that we want to say that, it was horrible. It was long. It was an arduous process, but we made it through. And on the other side, things were better. And I think that better part could be that with rising wages, it gives us more choices. Now, I find it interesting because, I was at a job fair this week where an employer was quite unhappy that they weren't able to get people, they're not able to get people to come in the door. And it's interesting because, I had started that job when I was a young man. And I explained to him, that the reason that he's not getting people like me to come through the door is that he's about $12 an hour light of where he would have been back then. And that you don't get to make the demands that you make and get the kind of folks to come through the door that you want if you're paying, well, not the greatest. He wasn't happy with that. But the reality is, you need to make people's lives better. And I'm glad for the woman that I met. I'm glad that for her, things are going to get better. As I do believe they will for the rest of us. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day Philadelphia longshoremen walked off the job. Led by the industrial workers of the world, the strike was remarkable for its militancy, its industrial unionism, and its interracial organizing. The Wobblies had been fighting to organize workers in the city for years. Unionizing efforts included Amalgamated Local 57, which organized workers across whole industries. Attracted to the IWW's message of interracial unionism, black longshoreman Ben Fletcher joined up readily and soon emerged as an early leader of Local 57 and then Longshoremen's Local 8. In his book, Wobblies on the Waterfront, historian Peter Cole notes the origins of the local started with the striking sugar refinery workers on the banks of the Delaware. Dockers made contact with the IWW during the strike and drew up a list of grievances and demands. And by this day in 1913, 1,500 longshoremen struck for a leveling of the hourly wage for all workers, regardless of skill, shorter hours, and union recognition. They held strike meetings every day and elected a committee of 15 with representatives from every ethnic and racial group. Cole notes this was crucial given the diversity of the dock's 4,000 workers. More than a third were black, another third were immigrants. The committee included Poles, Jews, blacks, Irish, and others. Strikers took on their employers and also the police. Beatings, intimidation, and arrests of strikers occurred daily and intensified as the ship owners attempted to herd in scabs. 1,200 coal and iron ore handlers joined in on the strike. The port was solidly shut down, and by the end of the month, the shippers were forced to concede to most of the Wobbly's demands. Industrial unionism and interracial solidarity had won the day.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the name of the day, Joel Greenberg. I know a lot, not on everyone's tongue, at least if you're not a Republican right now worrying about your golden boy going down. But evidently Joe Greenberg is going to plead guilty to what looks like 6 charges, 6 felonies, one of them being the sex trafficking of a minor. That ain't good. But he was up for something like 31, 35 felony charges. So if he's pleading to just 6, there's a sweetheart deal here, and he is blaming and pointing upwards, and everybody thinks Matt Gaetz is the guy who's probably going to be what is being sung for. And here to share some thoughts on the whole Gaetz-Greenberg sex, I hate to say scandal, because this is much worse than that. This is much worse. Anyway, that's why I've asked Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist and also a columnist over at the Daily Beast. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
I can't get it out of my head how much worse this is than it's just sex trafficking. No, this is so much worse than that.
It is. It's expanded significantly from what we knew. My colleagues at the Daily Beast broke this story today that indicates Joel Greenberg is signing a cooperation agreement in exchange for a lighter sentence, and that he's agreed to cooperate with the government in naming the other men who were involved in this sex trafficking business. But the more we learn, the more insane it gets. There was a side investigation. What started all of this was Joel Greenberg and Matt Gaetz trying to mine Bitcoin on government computers, tripping a circuit breaker and getting caught, moving it to another office that they accidentally set on fire, and then hiring escorts for do-nothing government contracts. These are the people who talk about government responsibility and government ethics, and they are perhaps the most corrupt politicians we've seen in at least my lifetime.
Yeah, well, aren't they the party of family values?
I don't think they know what party they are anymore, as we see with Liz Cheney. But right now, the silence is deafening on Matt Gaetz. It does seem now increasingly certain that Greenberg will disclose information about Matt Gaetz, probably provide more detail on the payments Gaetz made to these escorts, one of them who was a child. And as fun as it is to enjoy Matt Gaetz's well-deserved downfall, we do have to remember that this is not a victimless crime. There was a child who was sexually assaulted and was trafficked to other men through Matt Gaetz. And that is a disgusting thing. That should be prosecuted fully. And the Republicans that have been silent on this wear that on their souls.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that, this week you have the Republican leadership canceling Liz Cheney, but Matt Gaetz has been very, very silent on.
Yeah, and it just shows you the Republican Party is going through something right now that would be fascinating to watch, were they not our partner party in Washington, who to some extent we still need them to be coherent and aware of what's going on in order to govern. But they're busy cutting the throats of people who are insufficiently loyal, and the people who are replacing them may soon find themselves on the chopping block as the party rushes to the right.
Yeah, it's insane. Now, Thursday there was supposed to be a big letter that came out with a bunch of Republicans who were going to maybe start their own third party. I saw the ramp up to it. I didn't see much of the. It kind of fizzled on Thursday. It wasn't as climactic as I was hoping.
No, and that's because the sad truth of it is the majority of the Republican Party is wholly committed to MAGA and to Trumpism at all costs. They've shown they're perfectly willing to throw out longtime party supporters, powerful supporters. And the shame of it is that there's a real opportunity here for the Republican Party to look at what happened in 2020, do some soul searching, and come back as a functional conservative party. And instead, they have chosen to wage an all-out war on democracy, on voters, and on themselves.
Yeah, I know a couple of days ago, everyone was all up in arms that the woman who heads up the Heritage Foundation was bragging about how easy it was to pass the voter suppression laws that they wanted in places like Georgia. And I said, look, the reality is there's nothing shocking about her statement. This is what these groups have been doing for decades. They've got a direct line, a main line right into the Republican soul, and because it's who they are. They basically just do their homework for them, so it's not surprising to me.
They do, and this is a great reason to caution my Democratic and progressive friends who have been rallying to some extent around Liz Cheney. It is a very good sign that Liz Cheney has published an op-ed and stood up for democracy and said that Donald Trump does not respect democracy. Great. But the Republican Party is basically divided into two groups without a difference. One who believes the election was stolen and wants to suppress your vote. The other that doesn't believe the election was stolen and wants to suppress your vote. So these are not our friends just because they've made the bare minimum of respecting the government they claim to serve.
And not beyond that. I mean, you want to raise your taxes and want to give corporate America more and expand on the massive inequality that's going on, not invest in our infrastructure, all of that stuff, all of the bad policies, all of the horrible things that gave us the rise of Donald Trump. That's what both sides stand for.
Yep. And even as the Republican Party sort of eats itself in Washington, state parties around the country are chugging forward. They're passing voter suppression laws like we've never seen before. They're punishing schools, as was the case in Tennessee this week. Republicans in Tennessee passed a law essentially stripping funding from any school that teaches that systemic racism exists. And that is where we are at. And if we focus on this circus in Washington, we're not taking action on these things where Republicans are actually making things worse for everyone.
No, there's been a bunch of stories around the fact that they've drilled down into school boards. The I hate to say conservative because they're not conservative. The crazy movement seems to be moving its way down into places like school boards, like your local dog catcher, and it's a frightening kind of prospect that they have this kind of money and this kind of organization.
And this is where the money is going. When we talk about ALEC, the group that promotes state legislation for Republicans, that they basically slap their name on and it's already written. So you see 50 identical bills from Republicans across the country. They're not worried about Congress. They know where the money is, and that's in states. That's where Democrats are going to have to pick up their fight. So unless Liz Cheney is willing to help fight some of this gerrymandering and stand up for schools, I'm not especially interested in being her friend.
Yeah, no, I said from the beginning, I care less today than I did yesterday about Liz Cheney, and I didn't care about her at all yesterday. Blind squirrel found the nut. Good on her this one time. She's still the spawn of Darth Cheney, and there's part of me that goes, he's behind a lot of this stuff. He gets the daily briefings. He knows what's going on. I'm sure he knows what's coming down the road, and it doesn't look good for the Trumpkins and the ilk because of all the things from that could come out from this 1-6 commission and all of the crimes and all of the things that we're seeing with Gaetz and Greenberg and the rest of them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Liz Cheney's main benefit here is she has, and I hate to say it, but one of the great Republican strategists on her side in the form of her father. a man who has accurately predicted where the Republican Party is going for his entire career. And if the Cheneys are cutting bait on Trump, that tells me the people buying in on the dip, like Elise Stefanik, who replaced her in the House, in House leadership, are buying into something that is not going to return the investment they hope.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting because, I tweeted out today that, get ready for Romney Cheney 2024 because you're going to have this split. And someone said, no, Mitt Romney's never going to run for president. And Liz Cheney already said she's not going to run. I go, yeah, just wait.
Yeah, political plants grow in the shade, as Thomas Jefferson said.
Yeah. So, so any chance this happens? Because it looks like the split is going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a third party. I don't think there are enough Republicans to do that. I think the fight is going to be for the soul and what comes out of this commission, and what charges end up against dear leader.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think if there was a time for a third party, it would have been during 2020. I think there were a lot of talks about trying to launch that, and they just didn't have the critical mass. Because I think what a lot of never Trump Republicans who have been very principled in resisting Trump struggle to admit is that there are just not that many of them. The Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump, and they just don't have the popular support to really push against it. So what happens now is what becomes of a party that has no brakes and no one to say they've gone too far. And they're just going to run right off the cliff, as we're already seeing.
Yeah, no, I mean, when Ron DeSantis and Josh Hawley are your bench, that's scary.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And now the new normal of Ron DeSantis saying he might, if Donald Trump is indicted in New York, he might refuse to extradite him from Florida. So now the standard for loyalty in the Republican Party is disregard of the law in all cases. So that's an alarming thing to be proud to say in public.
But again, this is where the right-wing media machine comes into this. This is where that echo chamber comes into all this, because no matter what facts are, they're going to spin it however they want. We're watching it right now, Max. They're spinning what happened on January 6th. And recasting those traitors, those insurrectionists, whatever words you want to use, they're recasting them as patriots and trying to recreate this. Well, it wasn't that bad. It was like any other day. No, these were people who were trying to overthrow our country.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that effort to normalize this and minimize this started as the attack on the Capitol was ongoing. I mean, this was something that Republicans immediately recognized was a problem, and they're trying to tell Americans, as they did for 4 years, don't trust your lying eyes. I mean, we had a Republican today describe the January 6th insurrection, in which multiple people were killed, as just a normal tourist visit to the Capitol. That is a level of unreality that we cannot negotiate with and cannot bring back. That has to be contained and carefully monitored.
No, I agree. And, it's one of those things where, because I've been talking about that quote for the last 2 days, because, every day someone's defecating on the floor of the Capitol. Every day, 150 police officers are beaten. Every day it happens. It's just a normal day. Every day someone's urinating on a desk or smashing the windows there at the Capitol. Every day happens all the time.
Yeah. Setting fire to Senate desks, stealing podiums. I witnessed that every day when I was working on the Hill.
So the question is, with this commission that's now being put together, is this going to matter? Is it going to matter for the average Trumpkin who's the true believer? Is it going to matter to the people who believe that the election was stolen? Is it going to matter to them at all?
No, not one bit. And quite frankly, Rick, I am done trying to persuade and bring around MAGA Trump Republicans. I think Joe Biden made a very earnest effort during the campaign to reach out to Republicans and people who were disaffected and maybe wanted to give Trump a chance. And in return, they attempted to kill members of Congress and overturn the election. What the January 6th Commission is going to be important for is understanding where we need to shore up our protections for democracy. And that's going to be on the Attorney General and the White House to enact policies that actually protect Congress and the government from being so easily deposed again.
Yeah, and we need to lock the people up who were responsible, and not just the idiots who did it, not just the people who were dumping on the floor and the people who encouraged them, and the people who funded them. And that's where for me, I said the day it happened. For me, I want to know who funded this. I want to know the moneyed interests behind it. I want to lock up those billionaires and those big corporate special interests who funded this stuff and pushed this stuff down our throats. I want them. We'll see if that happens. Lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts. New York Times had a story today. I thought kind of cute. I'm not sure if it's an attack, but evidently beneath Joe Biden's folksy demeanor is a short fuse and an obsession with detail. Is that a bad thing?
That must seem very strange after the last 4 years to have any interest in detail at all. And no, I think the story is completely accurate. Yeah, I've had the privilege of working with then Senator Biden briefly in my past life in human rights. And he is a person who likes detail, who likes to fully understand an issue, says repeatedly, I want to know what I'm selling to the American people. He needs to believe that what he's saying is correct and right. Joe Biden's not just going to go out and say whatever moves a poll, because he understands voters are aware of that tactic and they don't like it. This is a guy who cares deeply about doing what's right. And if you come to him unprepared, he's going to shout at you.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a little incentive. But here's a short fuse, though, Max. Short fuse. And I said that. I'm watching it. I'm going, as opposed to the last guy who would, then send his minions after you. And I'm confused.
Well, I think in terms of things where you're allowed to have a short fuse, the presidency is certainly one of them. I think we're finally getting back to someone who appreciates the stakes and how important this is and the ability to help or hurt great many people if you're right or wrong. And he is determined to be as right as possible, as often as possible.
Yeah.
That's, if anything, a refreshing change from what we've been talking about the past few years.
No, and for me, the fact that he shows up every day, he's doing the job. And that's how he's going to do well in 2022. If we could just get an infrastructure bill moved forward, get people back to work, get the economy roaring again, I think 2022 will take care of itself.
As do I. I think we're moving fast. I think Biden is aware now that he has an infrastructure plan that is very popular, not only among Democrats and independents, but about 47% of Republican voters. And that, more than anything else, is what terrifies the Republicans, because there is no way they have found so far to message against that. And if 47% of Republicans like Joe Biden, 2022 is going to be very interesting.
No, well, they have found a way. Well, we can't raise taxes. We can't pay for it. Other than we're going to make you pay for, all kinds of, user fees and mileage taxes and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's their view. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. The tax and spend Republicans.
There they are. Max, I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work there at the Daily Beast. I'd love to have you back again sometime real soon.
Thanks so much.
Good stuff, Max Burns. Make sure you check out his work over at the Daily Beast. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. You ever enjoy a cold beer after a long day's work? Well, if you were a worker in the United States from 1920 to 1933, you would have to break the law to down a brew. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day that massive demonstrations for the re-legalization of beer were held in New York City and Detroit. Prohibition had lasted for more than a decade. The outcry for the repeal of the alcohol ban was growing. Mayor Jimmy Walker of New York City decided to hold a parade to support what he called beer for taxation. Mayor Walker argued that allowing the sale of beer would provide more taxes for the federal coffers. Getting beer brewing up and running again would also help cut unemployment, a serious issue in the midst of the Great Depression. 100,000 people answered the mayor's call and marched in the streets for beer. That same day in Detroit, 40,000 marched for beer. Many in the crowd were from the city's working class. One float in the Detroit parade bore a sign that read, "Beer," in giant letters. Around the one-word demand was printed the words farmers, masons, coopers, tinsmiths, carpenters, brewers, and porters. Workers of all types wanted their beer back. Participants in the parade chanted, "Who wants beer? We do!" A little less than a year later, the government answered their call and ended prohibition.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 generally bear, bear, bear.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 generally bear, bear, bear. A long time ago, way back in
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, I've got friends all around the country who, it's kind of like a joke with me and some friends that, you know, we come from the most corrupt states in the country. I got friends in Louisiana who will fight you over the fact that the good folks in Louisiana are the most corrupt politicians. And look, Pennsylvania, they've had their corruption problems. In fact, there was a study done by the folks at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and they said between 1976 and 2018, Washington, D.C. was by far the most corrupt, with the number of federal public employee corruption convictions per 10,000. D.C. was 16.7, Louisiana 2.6, Illinois 1.6, my state of Pennsylvania 1.44. But according to the Columbus Dispatch, they claim Ohio, the most corrupt state in the country. And here to share some thoughts on if that is accurate, if my friends in Louisiana or we here in Pennsylvania have claim to the title, I've asked David Pepper to come talk with us. David was the former Ohio Democratic Party chairman. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on. Wish it was a better topic than that one, but there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so Ohio, you know, look, in my former state, I love Ohio, but you guys have had some scandal, certainly. What makes you number one, though?
I mean, I think that story was describing the most recent one. That it was a deal with a large energy utility where the Speaker of the House had some massive bribery scandal in order to give them this huge bailout. And a lot of the money went to help him fix up places in Florida, other personal expenditures. But it's the largest bribery scandal in the history of Ohio in terms of one person. But as you know, I've been saying for years, I ran in 2014 for Attorney General in Ohio. And when I ran, I was able to show that the sitting Attorney General at the time, his name is Mike DeWine, literally would receive checks from lawyers that were signed on the exact day that those lawyers sent proposals to his Attorney General's office to do work. The same person would sign the check that signed the proposal.
Wow.
There was and that one would go to the AG's office, one would go to the campaign. 100% correlation between who signed the checks and who got the work. And I always said, if your Attorney General, who's supposed to be the one enforcing the laws, is the one who's doing pay to play, you know everybody else is. And that's essentially the story of Ohio. Every couple years, it blows up. You know, 2 years ago, the speaker then resigned because of a scandal that the FBI was looking into when it came to check cashing. A couple of years before that, the big scandal was for-profit charter school online companies absolutely ripping off the taxpayer. Biggest contributor to Republican politicians in the state. They set up all the laws so that the scheme could happen. The money came right out of our public schools. Now it's First Energy. Here's the problem, though. A lot of times the voters, they think everyone does it. These things are a little complicated. There's gerrymandering. So it just keeps going and going and going. And it could be more frustrating. The one scandal that we talked about it before we went on, the one scandal that really changed the politics here was when another donor convinced them to invest money into rare coins, and they lost a lot of the coins. Well, that was so outrageous, they actually did get upset. But a lot of these other ones, just every 2 years, FBI scandal. And here's the problem that's frustrating. The taxpayers pay the bill for it. They pay the higher energy costs. They pay the school property taxes that go to the for-profit scams. There's a cost to this corruption, and the everyday Ohioan's the one paying it. I think if we can better explain that part, that's when hopefully people demand change.
Yeah, as I remember right, wasn't there a politician from Ohio that just committed suicide or something down in Florida over this?
Yeah, he was one of the people caught up in that scandal. He was a lobbyist for, frankly, a lot of these controversial slash scandalous incidents. And he was found at a park in Florida and apparently committed suicide.
There are
up
real
to his ears in it.
Real consequences in all of this.
Yeah, up to his ears in it. But this one, watch it closely because it's still just getting underway. Now we're getting close enough to the election next year. Maybe a lot won't drop till after. But this thing's got legs that might involve other office holders than just the speaker, who's no longer the speaker. But here's the amazing thing. It's kind of like the Matt Gaetz story in Ohio. The guy who's indicted for the largest bribery scheme in the history of Ohio is still in the state house. They haven't even made him leave. We have city council members in Cincinnati and other places who've gotten in trouble for things far smaller. They're gone in a second, and Republicans demand that they go. But here you have the former speaker, largest bribery scandal in the history of Ohio. Guys committed suicide in Florida, and he's still voting on everything from voter suppression to you name it. And they could vote anytime they wanted. Democrats unanimously voted to expel him from the House. Republicans voted to keep him. Wow. They didn't even allow a debate on it. So they just let it go and go and go.
So maybe Ohio does have some claim to the title because things aren't quite that bad here right now. But it plays into that frame, David, that all politicians are corrupt. The whole system's broken. That's the one. They're bad people on both sides. It's that argument, which is why you don't get the clean house.
And I think that's part of it. Is that it if you're not paying attention every day, that's what you think. And I get that. But I think it also, compared to, COVID, your own job, your own wages, people know it's bad, but it may not be the number one thing they're voting on. And that's why I think part of it has to be, and we've talked about these things nonstop, but your school dollars that have made your property taxes go up have paid for that scam that made some guy $1 billion with a for-profit online school. You got to connect it back. There's a corruption tax.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too bleak about your former state, but Ohio is a failed state. We are failing on again and again and again. And a lot of it's getting back to this culture where these guys, and it's almost all guys up at the State House, they spend their time serving these private corrupt interests, and they don't spend any time serving the public good. So everything that you can measure that's of a public outcome in Ohio in the last 20 years is failing. 47th in public health. Public schools were 6 20 years ago. Now they're in the mid-20s. So we are going downhill quickly because the folks who are in Columbus aren't trying to serve the common good. They're serving these private interests that paid a lot of money. So there's a real cost to this corruption beyond the fact that we all know corruption is wrong.
Yeah, but at what point do people finally have enough of it? We have communities that are struggling because we went through deindustrialization. The COVID crisis has caused mass unemployment in some places. President Biden has extended unemployment benefits a little bit to help give people an opportunity to make it through and hopefully to raise wages a little bit so that when people get jobs, they're going to be a little bit better paying jobs. But when do people finally go, enough of all of this? We need some change.
You know what? I wish I knew the answer. I mean, Donald Trump was the most corrupt president you'll ever see, and he won Ohio by 8. Like, people just are not responding to what is, fewer ethics, worse corruption. I think in Ohio, and I don't mean to put all the eggs in one basket. I think it's going to take a very dynamic leader who says to the state, "We're failing." You grew up here. Like, Ohio was one of the great states when I grew up. We were proud of all the things we did. Big cities, small towns, John Glenn, Nat, the Astor, you name it. And we've lost so much of that. But we're kind of like the frog in the boiling pot. People don't really see it. And then they see corruption. They think everyone does it. The answer is no, we're number one.
Yeah, no.
And we maybe we're not number one. If we're not, we're number 4, number 3. And I think it's going to take, some real dynamic leaders to make the case to Ohioans. We can do a lot better than the corrupt right-wing stuff that's taking a state that was once great and is sending it the other way.
No, when I was a kid, John Glenn, Howard Metzenbaum, 2 great senators. Proud of both of them. And look, I'm hoping Ohio makes the right choice come next year as well. I mean, I'd love to have Sherrod Brown and someone like Tim Ryan in the halls of the Senate.
Absolutely. I mean, Tim's got a lot of potential to do that. But it's got to be, the Trump fever's got to break a little bit. You're seeing a little bit of the numbers there. But someone's got to just make the case in Mansfield, Ohio, and Marietta. Look at the state of your community. These guys in Columbus have been giving away money to the big people who give them money, and your town's paying the price. One of the ways that they're paying for all the stuff they do is they've been taking local government fund money for a decade. Comes right out of schools and, talk about defunding the police. It's coming out of local police departments to pay for whatever giveaways they're doing from Columbus. But that, again, and this is probably true in Pennsylvania, outside of the bubble of Columbus, I'm in Cincinnati, 100 miles away. It might as well be 1,000 miles away. People do not pay attention to state capitals. And that's one reason the lobbyists control everything, and the average people don't know what's going on there. So someone's got to really make that connection in order to get some change that we need. No,
you're right. Now, we're hearing a lot about how lazy people won't go back to work. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Evidently, I'm listening to my Republican folks, the right. Joe Biden gave this little bit of unemployment extension, this little bit of help, this extra $300. This has made people lazy, and this has evidently changed the laws because it's made people, quit jobs and still be able to collect unemployment, even though we know that if you quit, you're not eligible. And if your employer calls you back to work and you refuse, that's a voluntary quit. You're still not eligible. But it doesn't matter. They still frame it as, well, because Biden gave this little bit of extra help, people have turned lazy and they won't work.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is one, the Republicans are now trying to win over workers, right? I think it is one of the most telling moments. Here they do a tax scam 2 years ago because they say, the billionaires, when we give them the billions, they're going to spend it in the most responsible ways. It's going to trickle down and they'll behave incredibly. But $300 a week, the average American's just so lazy, they'll never figure out how to actually build a good life. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. I tweeted this the other day. I can imagine a town hall meeting with Rob Portman, who came out saying, get rid of the $300 a week. A worker saying, Mr. Senator, let's even believe their theory, okay? Which, by the way, the data does not suggest that this keeps people from seeking jobs. The data doesn't back them up. But let's even believe that it does. Let's say a guy goes to a town hall meeting and says, Mr. Senator, my family does better on $300 a week than the private employer in my community. Can you help me? And Portman's response is, oh, yes, I can help. Cut off the $300.
Yeah.
Think about that. Rather than unions, collective bargaining, minimum wage going up, healthcare, instead of actually trying to lift, as we said, they want to squeeze them to force them to go back to the job that's making them poor.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think that this debate, although it's lost them in all the other crazy stuff happening this week, it is a window into how people, not just the far right, but a lot of these Republicans, most of them, how they think about the average American. Again, give the Koch brothers billions, they'll spend it well, but $300 a week, we can't trust people with that. We need to literally cut them off to force them back to a job that is clearly not paying them enough that they'd go back. I mean, it's just a statement that I hope people pay attention to as we hear, Liz Stefanik and all these others say, we're about working people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is as insulting as it gets, in my opinion.
No, and it's amazing to me how many states have gone, Montana, South Carolina. I mean, there's Iowa, I guess. There's a bunch of them that are Mississippi. There's a bunch of them that are going to refuse the federal money, to force people back to work because their state's unemployment system was crappy to begin with. And now you're going to force them back into crummy jobs. It's really telling that they would do that because look, they are the party of desperate workers. Yes, they are the party of workers, the party of desperate workers.
Yeah, no, it's a squeeze. I mean, it's just people are widgets, and the big bosses are calling up these senators like Portman. Hey, we can't get anyone to come back to our jobs where we don't pay enough money, and thank you for never increasing the wages. Okay, well, we're going to get rid of anything that keeps them from coming back to working with you for however little amount you're paying them. I mean, it really is a telling moment, in my opinion. So now, I hope people see it for what it is.
So this is as former head of the Democratic Party there, how do Democrats use this in the coming election? Because very soon the American Rescue Plan money is going to kick in for families who have children. That's going to help them make the choice whether they want to go back to work or if they want to have someone stay home and raise the children. How do Democrats use this in the coming election?
Well, I think it starts with great candidates, and this is why Tim Ryan Sherrod came out on this very hard yesterday. He was, obviously I see Bernie Sanders doing the same thing. This is where a candidate like Tim Ryan, I think, can be very strong. This is his kind of issue. I think he can hit this issue very hard, all over the place. And again, I'm watching the other side, the people running on the Republican side. They mouth the words, we're for workers too, but this is an issue that I think is so again, people are going to be cut off. They're going to see themselves being cut off. They're going to feel this pressure that they haven't felt. And I think it's with a good candidate, I think you can really push it hard. I mean, this was something that made. There's a reason why both parties agreed to this last year. It was something that was badly needed, and people were really feeling the squeeze. And again, this is, as you said, this is more about Biden and Republicans trying to find issues, desperately trying to find issues. And all of a sudden, I think they're cutting it off in a way that we could take advantage of.
Yeah, but I see it as something that the Republicans, the calculus that they've made is it's not a lose situation for them because you're talking about those people because those people that aren't taking those jobs are women and people of color mostly. They're the folks at the bottom of the economic scale who the economy's been dumping on for far too long anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's how they think about it. I think more people are getting those checks than those people. And maybe if, again, you got to break through this Trump fever, maybe it backfires with others who thought, well, this actually was really helping me get through this crisis too. But yeah, I think that's the calculus. But like I said, I think it is a moment where if you really think about it, amid a lot of other crazy things happening, it tells you everything. I mean, it tells you everything. And it's the big bosses saying to these politicians, hey, people won't come back to us right now. Instead of saying, why do you pay them a little more? My brother runs a restaurant in Boston. He pays $15 an hour. He doesn't believe that his business is legitimate if his workers are working in poverty. That's his mindset. Well, if more people have that mindset, they'd be coming back to those workplaces.
Exactly. It's that simple.
But here they need the government to hold down wages and and pull the plug here to force them back. I mean, it really is sick when you think about it.
You're exactly right. They want desperate workers, exploitable workers. That's their party. But David, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Good luck there in the most corrupt state in the country.
Thank you. We will fight through it. Take care.
Thanks so much. David Pepper, former Democratic Party chairhead there in Ohio. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. One could say that brewing beer is important to the identity of the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Even the city's baseball team goes by the name the Brewers. And so, on this day in labor history, the year was 1953. The beer brewers in Milwaukee walked off the job in what came to be a 10-week strike. Brewers from some of the nation's best-known breweries participated in the strike, including Schlitz, Pabst, Miller, and Blatz. The year before the strike, Schlitz set a world record by producing more than 6.5 million barrels of beer. The strikers were members of the United Brewery Workers Union Local Number 9, part of the CIO. One of the main issues of the strike was that the brewers in the Midwest were typically paid lower wages than those on the West and East Coasts. The Milwaukee brewers wanted their work to be rewarded with similar wages. The workers won the strike when Blatz agreed to their demands. The rest of the Milwaukee brewing companies ousted Blatz from the Brewers Association as a result. The Blatz Brewing Company had been brewing beer in Milwaukee since before the Civil War and had produced the city's first individually bottled beer. But the other brewers were so angry about Blatz giving in to its workers, they cited unethical business models and kicked them out of their association. Due to the work stoppage, Anheuser-Busch out of St. Louis took over the top spot in beer brewing in 1953. The next year, at the company's Christmas party, the president of Schlitz claimed irreparable harm was done to the Milwaukee brewing industry during the 76-day strike of 1953. The next time you have a cold one, take a moment and raise your glass and remember the brewers who made that drink possible. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the end of another week. Oh, the craziness, the insanity. Oh, the fun of the GOP. A whole bunch of MGT nonsense, normalizing 1-6. Patriots they are, not traitors and terrorists. And so much more to go and get through. That's why I've invited my all-star panel back to go through the week that was, share some thoughts on the fun, the hilarity, the dumpster fire that is the GOP. I've got our all-star panel, Scott Dworkin, co-founder of the Democratic Coalition, Rich Ojeda, former West Virginia State Senator, presidential candidate, and national spokesperson for No Dems Left Behind, and of course, Sarah Burris, a fantastic reporter over at RawStory. Guys, thanks so much for taking time for us.
Airborne.
So let's start with the big news of the day. There will be a commission. There will be a 1-6 commission, even as the Republicans are trying to, change the narrative. They're not traitors, guys. They're patriots. Let's start with you, Scott. What are your thoughts on the so-called commission that's going to happen?
I think it's they got some great rules in there that I did not think that were going to get passed. And I think that we're going to have a serious report, a serious investigation, and they're going to follow the facts. And I think that's what we need. We need this 9/11 type of commission because it's not just going to be about the DOJ, the FBI, and whatnot. It's about knowing on the inside what members of Congress were involved in this, who was involved, because we know that Marjorie Taylor Greene was over, I call her Marge, so Marge was over at the White House weeks before the insurrection saying that she had a planning meeting. What were they planning? She was in front of the Capitol saying, we're going to fight tomorrow, the day before the insurrection. This goes out to millions of people. People followed that, listened to that, and they went there and they were incited to commit violence. Other people like Boebert as well. And so we need to figure out what staffers, what individuals, what campaign staffers, anyone linked to these people, so we can flush them out of our government. I think that's key number one. And the second thing is to make sure that everybody's prosecuted that's committed a crime. And then also the third thing, the most important thing, I guess, out of everything, is to make sure that we do everything possible to update our security to make sure this never, ever happens again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Rich, you got any thoughts on how this should play out? I mean, at the end of the day, we want all the criminals held accountable. And if there are some in Congress, we want them as well. Because Liz Cheney said today that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy should be subpoenaed. He should absolutely have to testify. Thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to know the details. I want to know what everybody did. And then I want to see them, face the repercussions to that. What they did was an attack on our democracy, and we right now are watching people, members of Congress, sit here and try to tell the American people that it didn't even happen, that it was like a normal day. And every one of us watched this. And if you didn't watch everything that took place on January the 6th with horror, wondering, is our democracy going to survive this? I want the people that gave the tours. I want to know what was said. I want to know the conversations. I want to know everything. I want to know about the Proud Boys and the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers, where they had their conversations talking about, we'll meet on this side of them and we'll catch them all in the middle and we'll end it. I want everybody to face the long arm of the law, because the people are. We realize that recently the guy who was filmed with his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk just got hit with 7 years. So I don't want to just see the people that were basically fired up and pointed into the direction and sent to do the bidding of Donald Trump. I want to see Donald Trump. I want to see those people. I want to see the members of Congress finally have to face justice for what they did to this country.
I want the people who funded them. That's where I want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because for me, all of this comes back down to the people who've paid for this stuff to happen, the people who've paid for these groups to exist, who have funded all this stuff, not just for the last couple of years, not just during the former guys' years, but for the last 50 years, the people who have funded the American Legislative Exchange Council, the Heritage Foundation, all of the state policy networks, the Republican echo machine. Those are the people I want to be found, and I want them brought to light. But Sarah, I wanted to get your thoughts on the commission. Any hope we're going to get to the bottom of it?
I think so. One of the things that we saw during the impeachment trial that we weren't really sure about yet is that they showed all of this footage from the closed circuit cameras that are all over the Capitol. And so a lot of those videos kind of show the different perspectives of the different parts of the Capitol. And so that to me meant, okay, well, so not only do they have the footage from that day, but they're also going to have the footage from the day before when members were giving tours in the Capitol, and some of the stories that we've heard about members bringing some of the insurrectionists into the Capitol so that they could chase the joint, essentially. So we know that the FBI and the DOJ probably have those videos, and I think it's time, I don't know if they're waiting to decide once people, to see if that's part of the commission or if the DOJ is going to get involved in that, or, how that works. But that was one of the things that Liz Cheney said, is she wants McCarthy to testify because of that. And it's not just McCarthy. There are many of them.
No, I'm right there with you. Go ahead.
Hey, Rick, if I can throw something in here.
Yep.
If all this stuff comes out and the American people get to see the details, the key is what's going to happen. Because here's the thing. We know for a fact that the two United States senators from Georgia that are no longer in those seats absolutely practice insider trading, and nothing has happened to them. I don't want to see this commission come through and lay out what they did when we find out who disabled the panic buttons, when we find the people that did the things that they did. I don't want to see them get away with it, because I'm sick and tired of looking and realizing that it seems like we've got people in this country that are obviously above the law, like Loeffler and Perdue, who practice insider trading. If we can send Martha Stewart to jail, we can send them to jail too.
I'm right there with you. I want to see lots of perp walks. I want to see people as guests of the state like everyone else. But you talked a moment ago about the kind of normalization that's going on, and a Georgia congressman, this Andrew Clyde, who I got to be honest, I did not know until he stepped into the spotlight and came out with this quote. I actually had to look him up. But he said of January 6th, there was no insurrection. To call it an insurrection, he said, is a bold-faced lie. He said watching TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes, taking videos and pictures. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was from January 6th, you'd think it was a normal tourist visit. I've got a whole list of stuff, but I want to throw it out to you first, Sarah. Was it a normal tourist visit? Was it a normal day in the Capitol? Just any other day?
I mean, except for the fact that people were dropping trow and taking a doozy on the floor. Sure, that was totally normal. People were peeing on the Capitol. Remember, there's a photo of a Trump banner that's hanging over the wall. And there's a dude that's just standing right underneath it, peeing on the wall. And so there are just so many horrible things. And all of these folks, I think we talked the other day about how Meghan McCain is like, I don't understand why we're still talking about this, not talking about real problems. It's like, because of these people, because there are Republicans that are in Congress, there are actual lawmakers who now deny that 1/6 ever happened. And I want reporters to run after them and ask them, well, do you believe 9/11 happened? Like, what else do you question actually happened? Do you believe in the moon landing? Like, is this across the board, or is it just because of this specific incident? No. And because, who knows at this point? These people are crazy.
Yeah, Rich, I wanted to get your thoughts because, right now we're seeing the Republican machine doing what they do. They're spinning the narrative, and the narrative now coming out is, the 1/6ers, they're good people on both sides. In fact, in jail, we now find out that the folks who have, loosely organized themselves into a group called the 1/6ers, they say the national anthem they sing the national anthem every day. They do the Pledge of Allegiance. They're good, patriotic Americans, Rich.
No, they're trash. People died on that day. Over 150 police officers were injured. A police officer lost his eye. A police officer was stabbed with a fence post. A police officer had 2 discs in his back crushed. Traumatic brain injury from being hit in the head. People were tased. They were pepper sprayed. These people absolutely attacked are the police officers that were trying to defend that Capitol. And, all you have to do is research Michael Fanone. Michael Fanone is the police officer that had the tattoo on his neck that said that, out of 20 plus years of service in the police department, that was the most violent day of his entire career. He was drug away from everybody, was beaten, was tased, had his badge stole, his radio stole, the people in the Capitol that had to endure that, let me tell you something. January the 6th was real to them. It was real to them. And, for us to sit and allow these members of Congress to get up there and spew that garbage, that their people in their states should be livid at the fact. Because are you saying that your people in Georgia are stupid? Are you saying that the ones that were watching and tuning in on January the 6th didn't see what they saw? Because obviously they did. And for any member of Congress to stand up here and try to deny, to try to pivot away from that is absolutely unacceptable. And these people should not be allowed to hold positions. I'm so sick and tired of realizing that we got people in Washington, D.C. that are nothing but a bunch of jackaloons. I want more people in Washington that have more education. I'm sick and tired of these Lauren Boeberts and these Marjorie Taylor Greens.
I'm there with you. Scott, you want to throw a thought in?
Yeah, I would say that, he should say that to Sicknick's family. He should say that to even Babbitt's family. He should say that to the officers who have committed suicide. He should say that to the hundreds of officers who probably will never work again because of disabilities due to it, or because of the trauma due to it. They should apologize also. I guess he should talk about the money that we've had to waste on security for the Capitol as well, the millions and millions and millions of dollars. The National Guardsmen that have had to be up there. The list is endless. But I'll tell you this, In 2022, we will remind that to every American. Obviously, we'll remind them that Democrats, delivered on COVID, and hopefully we'll have crushed it by then. But in regards to this, I'll just be clear. I'm still talking about the Mueller report. I didn't let that go. I'll never let go of the Russia scandal until we uncover everything. So if they think that I'm going to stop talking about the insurrection with like any of the people that were accomplices with this, just know that we'll never stop talking about this. Especially in regards to them, because they should not be in our government. Rich is absolutely right about that. There should be no role in public discourse with any of this nonsense. I mean, you even have one of the staffers of Marge Green saying to Swalwell today, like, take off your mask, like it's a frat party or something, in the halls of Congress. And so Swalwell told him what he thought. You're talking to a guy who has unvaccinated kids, and he's trying to protect them and do everything he can there. So he's still wearing a mask because there are people like the staffer for Marge Green in Congress that don't take care of themselves, that don't care about other people, and that don't care if they infect other people. So we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I think that, the insurrection is bigger than people think, and it will take a while for the smoke to clear, but we will figure out the truth of this. And just be warned, we won't stop until we get there.
No,
I promise you.
But this is one of those days where, and when I think of January 6th, I know exactly where I was, what I was doing. It's like 9/11. I knew exactly what happened, all of that. I don't want people to forget that trauma, that feeling they had as they watched the horrors of that day. So I really quick, I wanted to go through you guys and say, what do you remember from that day? Let's start with you, Scott. What sticks in your mind, and what do you think people need to remember? Because what we're watching right before our eyes is we're watching the Republican machine try and rewrite that day to where, no, it was a normal day. Of course, people defecating in the halls and stabbing policemen with, fence posts. Normal day. What do you think people should remember?
As a person that, I'll just go ahead and say this, a person who lived down the street from there and in the area for 15 years, it was a terrorist attack in my neighborhood, and I was going to be there. And at least to witness things. And I remember I met with some organizers just nonchalantly, and we just decided that everybody should avoid it. And we don't know why. Like, we took the reports kind of seriously, but when I saw that happening, it was a different kind of event. Obviously, the casualties not up to the level of 9/11. In regards to the danger of it, it was terrifying because they laid pipe bombs outside the DNC and the RNC. I had my security team do a sweep of my office and home because they felt that there was an imminent threat there. These are people who have threatened me tens of thousands of times. I've had to go into hiding for months at a time due to their threats, due to them letting foreign countries threaten me publicly. And all of this led to all these lies, all this BS and propaganda led to poisoning these people to believe that they could commit a terrorist attack without it being a terrorist attack, because they're thinking, I'm doing this for the president of the United States. Yeah. And they were brainwashed for so long to do that. So bottom line is, I think that everyone who lives in DC and the surrounding area is horrified. Obviously, the rest of the world is horrified as well. But we take it personally, and I promise you, we will hold everybody accountable to this, everyone.
And that's the hope. Rich, you got about 45 seconds.
Listening to the speeches that fired these people up, knowing that they were talking to probably a bunch of simpletons and then putting them in the direction and sending them, watching police officers being attacked with Blue Lives Matter flags. Remember, they wanted to wave those and say, we're with you. But until the police said, excuse me, you can't go beyond this point, then they immediately started attacking them. And then watching that guy with the horns on his head screaming and acting like a fool on the House floor. That's hallowed ground.
Something that needs to be remembered, especially as we're watching the Republicans, as we speak, trying to rewrite the history of that horrible day and turn those traitors and cowards into something of patriots. but it is what they do. Gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back on the other side of it. I get your thoughts on 2024. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Romney Cheney 2024. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. One could say that brewing beer is important to the identity of the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Even the city's baseball team goes by the name the Brewers. And so, on this day in labor history, the year was 1953. The beer brewers in Milwaukee walked off the job in what came to be a 10-week strike. Brewers from some of the nation's best-known breweries participated in the strike, including Schlitz, Pabst, Miller, and Blatz. The year before the strike, Schlitz set a world record by producing more than 6.5 million barrels of beer. The strikers were members of the United Brewery Workers Union Local Number 9, part of the CIO. One of the main issues of the strike was that the brewers in the Midwest were typically paid lower wages than those on the West and East Coasts. The Milwaukee Brewers wanted their work to be rewarded with similar wages. The workers won the strike when Blatz agreed to their demands. The rest of the Milwaukee brewing companies ousted Blatz from the Brewers Association as a result. The Blatz Brewing Company had been brewing beer in Milwaukee since before the Civil War and had produced the city's first individually bottled beer. But the other brewers were so angry about Blatz giving in to its workers, they cited unethical business models and kicked them out of their association. Due to the work stoppage, Anheuser-Busch out of St. Louis took over the top spot in beer brewing in 1953. The next year, at the company's Christmas party, the president of Schlitz claimed irreparable harm was done to the Milwaukee brewing industry during the 76-day strike of 1953. The next time you have a cold one, take a moment and raise your glass and remember the brewers who made that drink possible. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I find it interesting. The House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy this week said that he doesn't think anyone is questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election. He thinks it's all over with. He says we're sitting with the president today. It's all gone. Nobody's questioning the 2020 election except, well, the entire Republican Party. And they just ousted Liz Cheney because she wouldn't go along with the big lie. Personally, don't care about Liz Cheney at all. I think she's a horrible legislator. I want her nowhere near power, and I've said this from the beginning. But the fact that the blind squirrel found a nut and wasn't going to lie here, she gets some credit, but don't care. The fear now becomes Romney Cheney 2024, and here to share some thoughts on, well, if that's possible, even though she said no, she's not running. Our all-star panel of Scott Dworkin, Rich Ojeda, and Sarah Burris. Guys, thanks for sticking around.
Hey, boom.
So let's start with you, Rich. Romney Cheney 2024, what do you think?
Nah, I don't see that happening. You know, honestly, if the Republicans keep going down this path, first off, I'm sure there's a lot of Republicans right now that are a little saddened because we know that, Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and them, the stunts that they did were specifically trying to set themselves up for a 2024 run. But of course, now nobody is going to stand up against their orange Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, I don't think the Republican Party is going to fall apart. We've got people already saying that they're going to start, splitting and starting their own party if the majority of the Republican Party don't come to their senses. So what I hope that we have in 2022 and 2024 is actual, for the first time, real blue waves that finally get rid of these people. You know, I know that we're going to do everything in our power to go after the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Jim Jordans. It's going to be hard because a lot of them are in gerrymandered districts like Jim Jordan, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to do everything in our power to get rid of these people. I don't think that I think Donald Trump is going to probably be on the ticket if he's not in prison. Yeah. But if not, then you may have something like a Romney Cheney. But at the end of the day, like you said, you know, she's actually a horrible person. Just because she made the decision to finally come out and do something right for once doesn't give her the power to guarantee she's going to be a threat in 2024.
Amen. Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no way Mitt Romney's ever going to run for president again. Like, he's got a cushy job. He's happy. He's living in Utah, living his best life, and, you know, doing his dressage and putting the dog on the roof or whatever he does. And so I think he's happy. For Liz Cheney, I think it's the same thing too. Like, she's going to lose probably in 2022 or in a primary, and then she's going to go off and write her book and try and pretend like she's a moderate so that she can get on TV with something like, you know, CNN instead of Rick Santorum. And, you know, that's probably what I see in their future. I do think that the Cheeto is going to run in 2024 if he's not in prison, or, you know. But the interesting thing about that is that if he is indicted and Ron DeSantis decides that he's going to protect him from the FBI coming to haul his ass in prison, then that's going to make it really difficult for him to campaign.
Yeah, kind of difficult. Scott, your thoughts?
Difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Rich is focused on 2022 as well. I think it's, you know, it's a mixed bag right now because the Stefanik move is a crumbling of the party. It's not a power move at all. It's a dumb move because they're losing a lot of money. And what people should remember is who Liz Cheney's dad is and his knowledge base and how much he worked with the Trump administration and how much he worked with, you know, companies like Halliburton. I mean, like, this was a gold mine for Trump. Was a gold mine for Cheney, Dick Cheney, that is. So long story short, I'm guessing Dick Cheney knows some things that happened in regards to January 6th and shared that with Liz Cheney. And that's my assumption based on knowledge that I've learned recently. But I would say that I think that she's got a really bright future in the Republican Party. She's just waiting for it to kind of crumble and then maybe slip in there. But Sarah also has the right attitude about the moderate and her having the game. She's got multiple fields to play, and she wouldn't have that if she was supporting the orange guy right now.
Yeah, because here's the reality, and you're right. You know, the former Cheney, Darth Cheney, he still gets the briefings and all of the information that everyone else doesn't get, and he, unlike the former guy, actually read them, and he actually knows what's going on. So I think you're probably right. But, you know, I wanted to get your thoughts because, you know, even if we have this 1-6 commission and they come out with all the horrible stuff that's going on, there's still so many of us that, not us, but there's so many in this country who are deluded. And I don't know if you saw the clip of Lynn Wood, Trump's attorney, who was speaking in front of a bunch of folks in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, saying that Trump's still president, that the military is going to listen for him to give him the call, and, you know, he's going to give them the code for first strike. You know, he evidently Trump signed the Insurrection Act in secret because Trump never conceded. And he's got these people believing that, you know, in about a month, he said, you're going to see Trump's going to come out of the ashes. But it's not about Trump. It's actually about God, because God's going to come. And all of these people are eating this stuff up and are true blind faith believers. So do you think whatever comes out of this commission, Scott, that these folks are actually going to, I don't know, even consider? Because God's coming back to clean everything up, Scott.
I think that with this commission, it's going to be in drips. It's not going to be just one full report, and that's when we read it. I think that as they find out information, it will be provided to the public, as long as it's legendary information. You know, it's living in bizarro land, and I feel bad for anyone who's sick enough to have to endure that and think of that as reality, because the honest truth about it is At this point, it's a cult, and they should be treated like cult members. And I know that people don't like this route, but like where people are buying into this, you need to be kind of compassionate and be like, listen, like, I know that you think this is the truth, but like maybe we can talk about this. And obviously that doesn't usually work, but I've tried it a couple times and it's been okay. I think that when it comes down to it, you're going to have these people like Gaetz and Marjorie and everybody else be shown to be as terrible as they actually are, that we know them to be. And so when those crimes or passions come to light in regards to these folks, I think that they're going to be shamed into a corner, because after COVID, remember, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So it's hard for people to understand. And some people are at home and they want to live in that bizarre land where Trump is still president, and because they're not outside, they're not out doing stuff. They're probably not vaccinated, right? So they're sitting home and they're watching TV. I think once we get through the pandemic and we live a public life and people see that lie won't carry, and people will be shamed in the corner, or they'll still exist in their little bubble. And we just have to deal with them like the Tea Partiers, where are the Tea Partiers?
Gonna see how that works out. But Sarah, I'm waiting for you to say bless their hearts. So I got to hear it.
Yeah, no, it's for real. Bless their hearts. I don't know that I necessarily agree with Scott. I think a lot of these folks, whenever you confront them, they double down. There probably are some that my stepdad, bless his heart, voted for Donald Trump, and I on 1/6, I consciously didn't come back to DC after Christmas. So I spent Christmas and New Year's with my family, and then stayed there because I was scared to come back. And I remember, like waking up and looking at Twitter, and immediately turning on the TV, and we just sat there with our mouths open. And this is the thing that my mother keeps yelling at him is, well, you voted for him. So this is, I think that a lot of these folks that we feel like we've lost in our family and our friends who have, gone down the Q route, I do think that they are people who are not going out in the world and living their lives and being confronted with the reality. But I think too, a lot of these people are never going to vote for Democrats. They're never going to believe anything that we tell them. And those are the true trumpets that are never, they're never people that we could reach anyway. So, it's kind of like, well, why? I always say, why try? Like this is the thing that Democrats always do, is they're like, oh, we need to get Republican voters. No, you don't. They're never going to vote for you. Stop trying.
Leave the fives alone. You're never going to reach the fives.
Never, ever trying to convert a five.
Don't even try. It's that simple. But Rich, I want to go to you because this week another letter came out from the flag officers for America. I'm sure you saw this. 120 generals and admirals who wrote a letter saying Joe Biden's not the president, or he's not the legitimate president. He's mentally deficient. That our elections are all bad. That. Kind of a kooky letter, with the likes of Boykin and Poindexter names attached to it. I wanted to get your thoughts as our military expert in this. Is this scary when you have this kind of military clout siding on one side like this?
Yes, it's very scary to me. I would have never in my life thought for 1 minute that senior leaders in the military would fall for someone like Donald Trump. Donald Trump, there's not anything that Donald Trump does that reminds me of leadership whatsoever. Loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity, personal courage. He has none. So how can someone who has dedicated their life and spent between 25 and 40 years in uniform look at Donald Trump and go, that's the guy? That's scary to me, to think that we've got senior officials that were in the military that would absolutely sign on to a letter and basically say that this was stolen. They're buying into the lie. I get why Donald Trump loved the poorly educated, because those are the ones that are the easiest to dupe. But you know what? These people aren't poorly educated. These leaders are West Point, Annapolis. These people have all went through the Command General Staff College, the War College, and I'm telling you, when you meet these people, they're cut from a different cloth. General officers are just that damn smart. That's just how it is. And for me to hear that 120 of them have gathered and signed on to the big lie, it scares me. That right there, when that come out, that was something for the first time I looked at and I thought, that right there is scary.
No, that's
because
trouble.
if they believe that, then that tells me that we've got people that are active duty in uniform that also believe that.
Which takes me
That
back.
Marine that was arrested this week.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was pretty high up, right?
He was a major. That was what my rank was when I retired. But yeah, I mean, that means that he's went through the Command General Staff College and stuff like that. Yeah, it's scary. But at the end of the day, to me, certain things like Michael Flynn, I still believe that Michael Flynn should be brought back on active duty. As an officer in the military, when you retire, your oath never dies. As an officer, you can be called back to duty anytime until you're like 72 years old. Michael Flynn should be called back on active duty for what he did and should be court-martialed for that. But this right here is quite scary to think that we've got leaders in the military and leaders that are, former leaders that could absolutely fall for the big lie.
And the reason I bring this up is I go back to the thing that Lynn Wood said. Now I believe Lynn Wood's a kook. I believe he's way out on the fringe and not someone to listen to, but still he did say that Trump signed the Insurrection Act in private, that the military's listening. They're waiting for the call. They're waiting to get the codes, that he's the supreme leader and that there are people in our military who would answer that call. And this letter kind of says, there are
but
some.
You're right. But the reason for that, for some of these people, maybe they think that, not everybody that serves in the military does it for duty, honor, and country. There's a lot of people that serve in the military, and I guarantee you Michael Flynn is one of them. It was all about being able to climb to the next level, to be able to get that next promotion. And there's a lot of people like that. And I would assume that a lot of these people that sign on to that are those type of people. The thoughts are that, if Donald Trump comes back, then maybe we can get back in the game again and hold some position of authority. Because you know what? When you go from being at that level to being a civilian again, let me tell you something. It's a culture shock.
Scott, you want to jump in?
I mean, I never served in the military, so I don't want to speak on that. But I will say that it is pretty terrifying to see the military be abused by some leadership. And also, I talked to one of the guys that was a senior aide to General Mattis, I think. And it was just the correlation of when Trump would tweet, the Pentagon didn't even know about it. And I remember President Obama, with Twitter just starting around then, he actually would run through social media posts through every department. And then also through, I think, ambassadors, and they'd make sure it wasn't offending anybody. Is this color offensive? Diplomacy. So it is very, I guess, I would assume I would hope that maybe some of those people who signed on that letter didn't know what they were signing or didn't think that it was going to be that serious or be covered or, oh, yeah, I agree with that, kind of like nonchalant. But it seems like so serious and so big that the brainwashing has reached a tipping point and it's infected our military as well. And so obviously part of the studies that the DOJ should be doing is looking at our military and especially people in command to make sure that there are no Michael Flynns within the ranks. And I'm sure there are, but at the same time, you have to level that out with investigating the military. There's a line there, a big line.
Yeah, but I look at someone no, go ahead.
There is also an investigation going on now to kind of de-white supremacist the military, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. They can expand that based on the parameters because the same brainwashing mechanism. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, because I look at this and, the names that popped out on the list to me, and I guess the last question I've got for you, Rich, because I'm sure you've looked through this as well. I look at someone like Lieutenant General Boykin, who's now evidently the executive vice president over at the Family Research Council. You got Brigadier General Dan Bodek, who's running for Senate up in New Hampshire, and, of course, John Poindexter, who we all remember as the criminal from Iran-Contra. But there were a lot of other influential names on that list as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that's scary. I mean, but once again, I see people that, could be thinking of something that would be beneficial for them. Right. Something is in it for them. You're not going to sit and tell me that they're just going to sign on to a piece of paper without thinking that it's going to come back and do something for them. Yeah, I don't see it happening.
Good point, guys. Stick around through the break. I want to get to the other side through some of the more crazy stuff that's going on, as if what we haven't been talking about isn't enough. Right back after this. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day Philadelphia longshoremen walked off the job. Led by the industrial workers of the world, the strike was remarkable for its militancy, its industrial unionism, and its interracial organizing. The Wobblies had been fighting to organize workers in the city for years. Unionizing efforts included Amalgamated Local 57, which organized workers across whole industries. Attracted to the IWW's message of interracial unionism, black longshoreman Ben Fletcher joined up readily and soon emerged as an early leader of Local 57 and then Longshoremen's Local 8. In his book, Wobblies on the Waterfront, historian Peter Cole notes the origins of the local started with the striking sugar refinery workers on the banks of the Delaware. Dockers made contact with the IWW during the strike and drew up a list of grievances and demands. And by this day in 1913, 1,500 longshoremen struck for a leveling of the hourly wage for all workers, regardless of skill, shorter hours, and union recognition. They held strike meetings every day and elected a committee of 15 with representatives from every ethnic and racial group. Cole notes this was crucial, given the diversity of the dock's 4,000 workers. More than a third were black, another third were immigrants. The committee included Poles, Jews, blacks, Irish, and others. Strikers took on their employers and also the police. Beatings, intimidation, and arrests of strikers occurred daily and intensified as the ship owners attempted to herd in scabs. 1,200 coal and iron ore handlers joined in on the strike. The port was solidly shut down, and by the end of the month, the shippers were forced to concede to most of the Wobblies' demands. Industrial unionism and interracial solidarity had won the day.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, top story of the day, Joel Greenberg. You may remember that name. Evidently, Joel has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. He's going to plead to 6 felonies. Understand, he was charged with 31 felonies. He is now going to plead to 6, one of them being sex trafficking of a minor. He claims that they were basically passing around a 17-year-old girl for sex to other adults. One of them was kind of with him all the time. And I think everybody has a thought of who that could be. Maybe to share some thoughts on who mystery adult guy could be. Our all-star panel, Scott Dworkin of the Democratic Coalition, Rich Ojeda of No Dem Left Behind, and, of course, Sarah Burris from RawStory. Guys, thanks for sticking around for us. Let's start with you, Scott. Who could adult number 1 be?
I would assume that it's Matt Gaetz or one of his associates. At this point, they've already taken his phone. I'm guessing they have access to his iPhone and calendar and contacts, and I'm guessing they also have his congressional stuff. And the funny thing is, he didn't complain that much about it. He didn't say that it's a big conspiracy against me because they took my phone. And I'm like, that's a really big deal. That's a huge deal. And all the information that's on that phone and then background on it, that means that they're well along in this investigation. And you can look back, it's spanning to like 2017 and before. It involves a lot of money laundering through Bitcoin, a lot of fraud. He bought an ID machine so that he could repurpose and present fraudulent documents across state lines to show girls to be women instead of girls. And so like fake ID printing, but using the government office to do so, a complete abuse of power, writing checks directly to himself. It's going to be one of the biggest corruption scandals, and this is hard to do in Florida, but it's going to be one of the biggest ones in Florida history. And I do believe that Matt Gaetz is the tip of the iceberg, and I do believe that he will be arrested and he will be charged, probably involving the money more so than anything else is what's going to be easiest to charge with him. It depends on the testimony of the different women and girls as to what he's done in that regard. But I'm guessing the financial transactions and, his work with that, I mean, I'm surprised he's still in Congress right now, but I'm also not surprised because McCarthy is in charge.
Yeah, well, Liz Cheney out of the leadership, but Matt Gaetz still right there and doing just fine. Thank you very much. Rich, you and I have had this conversation before. If it were my daughter, Matt Gaetz wouldn't have to worry about the police or charges because, well...
Yeah, he would be held underwater until the bubbles stop. Absolutely. But I'm going to tell you, 35 different charges down to 6. What that right there means is that Greenberg is rolling and saying everything so that he can get that sweet deal. And he's probably going to spend some serious time in jail, but he may actually get to see the light of day. And that's why he's doing everything and he's doing that. He's rolling. Matt Gaetz is absolute trash, and he's going to go down for this, and he needs to go down for this. But once again, to watch the Republican Party do absolutely nothing, it doesn't surprise me because this is the Republican Party of Trump. They don't think that they can be held accountable for anything. And that's why it's important that this does. It's important that the January 6th commission highlights the people that did wrong, and then they are charged with those things. It's important for us to see it. It's important for us to see the 2 senators from Georgia to get hit with insider trading. And it's very important for us to see Matt Gaetz. And, I hear that, Governor DeSantis could be pulled into this as well. Everybody that participated in this absolutely needs to go down. They need to be exposed. And they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. A message. We have to send messages. We've got to send messages now, more important than anything, because of what we just saw. We have to make people in this country realize, and leaders in this country know, that this type of behavior can never be tolerated again. And it goes all the way back to Donald Trump's behavior, goes all the way to Matt Gaetz's behavior, Marjorie Taylor Greene's, Lauren Boebert's, all of them. Everybody needs to be held accountable, and the American people need to see justice.
I'm there with you. Sarah, thoughts?
I want to know what Matt Gaetz said to Kevin McCarthy to convince him to stick with him, because that was a weird thing that happened after all of this came out. And people were asking McCarthy, are you going to kick him out of the caucus? Like, are you going to ask him to resign? And McCarthy, he hedged a little bit and was just like, well, we're going to let the investigation play out and we're going to, see what happens. He didn't really commit to, I'm standing with Matt Gaetz, but it has been so long since that first story dropped until now that it's very clear that the Republican Party is linked to Matt Gaetz, and there's no separating them now. Like, they let him stay there, and a bunch of them have defended him, and obviously had a rally at the Villages with him. And these are just not these are bad PR moves. These are really terrible PR moves, and you would think at the very least for voters in Florida, particularly older voters, that they would look at this as, that's my granddaughter. This dude, this, creepy, nasty guy slept with somebody who's my granddaughter's age.
Yeah,
you think that.
Beavis slept with my granddaughter.
Instead of forehead, I like to call him five head. Florida guy, Florida man.
No, and most certainly Florida guy right there. I mean, that's the sad thing. Anybody, any thoughts on the story of Gaetz asking for a pardon from Trump? Anybody surprised Trump didn't give it to him?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with Barr, because Barr at the end was absolutely irate when people were talking about, Matt Gaetz getting some FaceTime with Donald Trump. And I believe it's because Barr knew that was taking place.
Mm-hmm.
I can guarantee you that they were doing everything in their power to try to secure a pardon for that. And the reason is because they know that what they did was going to come to light. And without a pardon, they're done. And that's how come that Greenberg guy is absolutely rolling and going to sing like a canary. Fact.
Yeah, he is singing. Scott, you want to jump into that?
I mean, I would just say that, Matt Gaetz, I believe, has hired a criminal defense attorney. Right now, we're coordinating with the indictment that's been handed down in the plea agreement and dates that we've uncovered of Matt Gaetz transactions from his campaign account and leadership PAC in regards to those dates. So there are some dates that correspond with that. And if we can find that, the FBI sure as heck found it. This is not, I agree with Sarah, this is a bad PR move on catastrophic levels, because I promise you, I will attach Matt Gaetz to every competitive Republican in the country, and we'll do it constantly. And if you're silent about it, we'll remind people about that too. But this is the Republican Party, the Marge Greens and the Gaetzes. That is the Republican Party, and I promise you, everyone will be reminded of that, especially in October of 2022.
No, I'm there.
The other thing too, I want to say that the Gaetz stuff obviously is coming out. If you think about the date of when the trial is going to happen and when all of this stuff is going to become public, you're getting into election season. You're getting pretty late into 2022. At the same time, because Republicans dragged their feet for so long on the 1/6 commission, if it's just getting started, chances are it's going to take a year. And now we're, again, getting into election season. So all of this news is going to start coming out right before the 2022 election. And it's all their fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all there for him. Now, you guys brought up Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I got to be honest, she has done a much better job of getting attention than the gun fetish girl. And I didn't think that possible. I thought Boebert was much more polished, much better at keeping attention. But Greene this week stalking down AOC in the hall, screaming, carrying on. Good move, bad move. Let's start with you, Sarah. Thoughts?
Oh, that's so stupid. I get why she did it. I get this is all about money. What shocked me the most is that she then, saw this video and thought, oh, I'm going to upload this to Facebook. That just is beyond me. But I think then it creates a pattern. And that's the reason that I think she deleted it, is if there is a pattern of behavior, then ethics can get involved and security can get involved, because it's becoming a security issue now. And so I think that's going to be, that's where things get a little bit real. This is more than just somebody being annoying because they don't have any committees and there's nothing, left to do. This is, somebody who's, she's not just a couple of fries short of a Happy Meal. Like, she's got nothing in there except for the toy. That's how far she's gone. And so I think this is somebody who has made that step too far.
No, but what's interesting to me is, it's I loved AOC's, response to it. It was, I was a bartender. I used to throw people like her out all the time, which I thought was great. But, Rich, for me, I was looking at, if I'm AOC, there was, I guess maybe it's just I grew up in a very violent environment as a kid, to where if someone's stalking you like that, just one good shot between the eyes solves that.
Make no mistake about it. She grew up in the Bronx, right?
Right.
Let me tell you something. That girl right there has had to fight for everything that she's got. She just has too much respect for the House floor. That's what it is. And I will tell you right now, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're bullies. And the best way to deal with the bully is to pop them right there in their face. And I'm going to tell you right now, she's going to run upon somebody and they're going to deal with her. Now, what needs to happen, she's already been kicked off of her committees, so she has nothing to do except basically come up with just ways to try to get her name and face out there. But you know what? I think it's time for them to start talking about it. If she's going to pose a threat to people on the House floor, then maybe it's time to vote to go ahead and remove her from the House floor. And the Republicans need to participate in this. They should also be infuriated with somebody acting like that on the House floor. That House floor is hallowed ground, and it needs to be treated as such. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is not intelligent enough to realize that. She's just not.
Yeah, but here's where, she is who the Republicans are right now. So I can't give them a pass. And I've said, I'm probably the only person here who thinks it was a mistake for Democrats to throw her off the committees because one, it gave her, she now has nothing to do. And two, it doesn't give someone on the panel to go, education, we need education funding. Exhibit A.
We've seen a bunch of cowards, but understand that over 100, I believe it's something like 100 Republicans have come out behind the scenes, and they've basically said that if the Republican Party doesn't do something, then they're possibly going to look at starting another party.
Yeah.
So we start to see, so there's a lot of Republicans that we don't hear nothing about. And I like to believe that those are the ones that are sitting there going, what? She did what? Gosh, again? That's what I hope.
Yeah, but wasn't there supposed to be a letter declaring that on Thursday? Did I miss it?
I thought it came out. And what was interesting to me is that Lindsey Graham, was it last weekend, made that comment like, Donald Trump is the most important person in the Republican Party right now, and if he leaves, he's going to take half of the voters with him. Well, this letter from these 100, some odd Republicans, they're basically going to say, all right, we're going to take the other half. And that's a really, there's a whole other half to the party that Lindsey Graham should probably think about.
But Scott, you as the political guru here, as someone who's run campaigns, is that not the best place for the Democrats going into 2022?
But we've talked about when we first did with Marge Greene is we tried to expel her, and then we did a kind of vote count. We didn't have any Republicans, 0 at that time. So we moved into a new tactic of removing her from committees because someone like that shouldn't have access to that kind of information, and they should not have a megaphone at that level. That was our thought behind it. We're going to do the same thing with Matt Gaetz and the Judiciary Committee. So the reason behind it, if you look at the infection is spreading, you have a staffer. I've never heard of this in my life. You have a staffer of Marge Greene's, right, who's taunting a member of Congress in the halls of Congress, telling him to remove a protective guard during a pandemic, a mask. And I don't understand exactly why someone would be stupid enough to do that, except for the fact that he works for Marge Greene and he thought, this will be smart. Well, now he's famous, not in the right way. I think that this is just another, overall, we need to make sure that we confront the bullies in the most peaceful way possible, and then do everything we legally can to remove them from any kind of power and make sure that they never serve in a public role ever again of any sort.
I'm right there with you, and it's I'm hoping sanity at some point prevails, and the election in 22 wipes a lot of these folks out. That is my hope. Last bit I wanted to get to. New York Times had a story that beneath Joe Biden's folksy demeanor, a short fuse and an obsession with detail. Is that a bad thing?
Oh God, no, it's not a bad thing. What? No, we were missing that. That's what we were missing is, that was something that President Obama specialized in because he would ask so many questions. And so you have that kind of coming over now. You have a president who's talking to every former president that's living right now, getting advisement, because obviously we're in a time of trauma and craziness and pandemic. I think that we need a stern person who knows what they need to know to make a decision. And I think that President Biden's doing that.
Yeah.
Based on everything that's happened, you have the gas crisis, you have X, Y, Z, all these things happening at once, and you have experienced people in government now that can handle these issues. God forbid if the orange man got reelected, which he did not. He lost by a landslide. Just to be clear.
Rich, you get the final thought.
Details matter. You know, I think that's very important. And you know what? I don't have a problem with somebody that's got a short fuse, because that person right there absolutely doesn't waste time, wants to get things done. And right now, this country needs a lot of TLC, and we don't need to wait 3.5 years to see it come to, to the front. So let's get some stuff done. And details matter.
Yeah, it would be nice to have somebody who actually knows what's going on instead of just having to watch Fox News and hear what the personalities have to say.
Yep. True.
We definitely live in interesting times, and thank you for the New York Times for this. Was well worth the inches on the page to tell us that Biden has a short fuse and is interested in details. I already knew he was interested in details. He's a fact-oriented guy. But guys, I appreciate you taking time for us, sharing your thoughts, sharing your expertise. I look forward to having you guys back again. Thanks so much.
Airborne.
Thank you.
Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated. That's it. Good stuff. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, any comments, I'd love to hear it. You can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Got any thoughts, any questions, comments for our expert panel? I will make sure that we get them the messages as well. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as I said, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, I'd love to hear it. You can email me directly at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The